Oh, it sounded good in here, huh? Yes. I missed this. Thanks for having me back. If you don't know me, I'm Rabbi Ben Richards. I was here a few years ago. If you do know me. And you take your own life in your hands coming to services, so. Shabbat shalom, y'all. Thank you. I want to talk about the Parshat as a good rabbi should. I also want to share one of my favorite stories from the Talmud, so I thought, how can I do that, stick them together? But I think I figured out a way. But first, we have to know what's in the Parsha. So maybe you know already, but I'll just give you a recap in case. Parshat Chukat is full of interesting narrative. Miriam passes away, and strangely enough, the people get very thirsty right after, which if you come to the learning later, this is a bumper, you might find out why that could be and if such a thing as Miriam's well might have existed. While later, Israelites are trying to cross into the land, and the Edomites say, you definitely cannot come. And the Israelites are like, we won't do anything bad. We won't touch your stuff. We'll buy your products. And the Edomites say no. A little while later, kind of strange, Aaron is going to die, and God says, all right, take his vestments off. We need a new high priest. Aaron, Moses' brother, is going to pass away. Aaron does pass away. Immediately after, really weird, the people start grumbling. They're talking trash about God and Moses and each other, and God gets mad and sends snakes. It says seraph snakes, maybe fiery serpents. Sounds kind of awesome. They show up, they start biting the people. The people don't like this. They go to Moses and complain, we're so sorry, we didn't mean to do it. Moses talks to God, and God says, make a little snake idol, and whenever the people look at the snake idol, they'll be cured of their snake bites, which is weird. We're going to talk about that, because it seems like a snake idol, which doesn't feel like what God would want, so maybe it's something else. After that happens, the people then say, hey, let's try to be friendly again. They reach out to Sichon, who's the king of the Amorites, and say, hey, we'd love to. And Sichon says, over my dead body. And they say, promise, and they kill him. And then they do the same thing to Og, Melech Bashan, who it gets such little airtime in this Parsha, which is such a shame because he's really one of my favorite characters. He's supposedly a giant who has this epic battle with Moses, but that only happens in the Talmud. Otherwise, it's just like the Israelites conquered Og, Melech Bashan. And he shows up in our daily psalm, that long one, Hodu Ladonai. But otherwise, he doesn't get airtime, which is a shame. Anyhow, that's sort of the Parsha more or less. There's also a thing about the red heifer. I talked about that yesterday if you were here, where if you have death impurity, there's this ritual. You take a red heifer and you grind it up and you use its blood in like this powdered form to make your death impurity go away, so then you're pure. So of all those things, which would you want to talk about? Well, it doesn't matter because I picked one, and I picked to talk about the snakes. Sorry, yeah, the snakes, right? Because we're in Texas, so why not snakes? The snakes thing is so weird, and the placement of it I don't think is unintentional, and that's where I'm going to try to derive meaning from it. So let's just remind you what happens. Aaron dies. Who is Aaron for the people, by the way? What's his greatest quality according to the tradition? So I would say, while it is impressive that he's a part of the priesthood and he's pious and he's whatever, he's chesed, he's loving kindness. He's just a guy who goes after people to make peace between them, right? He's what we call a rodef shalom, like rodfei shalom, right? Multiple peace pursuers. Aaron is called a rodef shalom. He goes after peace. He actively makes it happen in the world. And we know this because not only does Hillel in Pirkei Avot, the great rabbi, say, you should be like the disciples of Aharon. And what does that mean? Be a rodef shalom, be rodfei shalom, follow peace, make peace happen in the world, especially when it's challenging. But Avot to Rabbi Natan, which is basically the commentary on that, says, yeah, we can tell you what Aaron used to do. What did Aaron used to do? Well, when he heard someone murmuring about their fellow, he would go up to them and he would say, you don't really mean that, do you? You don't really hate that guy. You're just in a moment of anger, frustration, and we all get there. But don't let that color your perception of that individual who's really wonderful. And the person would say, oh, maybe you're right. Maybe I really don't hate that scumbag, right? And what else would he do? Well, if he saw someone, he's so sneaky. If he saw someone who was upset with someone else and they weren't talking anymore, which I'm sure we can't imagine in our day and age, but they weren't talking anymore, he would actively go to one and he would say, your fellow is just heartbroken, sitting over there, crying over the fact that you guys don't talk anymore. And he wants to come over and say he's sorry about the things he said about you, but he's afraid that you won't accept him back. And the person would sit there and they'd say, yeah, I would, of course I would, right? And he'd go to the other guy or woman and he would say, hey, your fellow over there, he's just so sad. He wants to say sorry and he doesn't know the right words. He's so sorry that he called you all those names in front of everyone. And the guy would sit there and he'd say, well, if I'd known he was so sad, I would be the one to go. And he'd say, you should go tell him. And he'd go, you should go tell her, right? And then he'd walk away and they would approach all sullen and be like, this fight isn't worth it. We shouldn't have used our words so poorly. Let's move on from this moment, right? That was Aaron, which is why the tradition says when he died, how long did the people mourn him for? Not 1 day, not 7 days, 30 days. They did a whole shloshim. Instead of just the 7 days of Shiva, you might be mourning somebody. Obviously you mourn them all year. But even non-relatives, everybody felt like Aaron was their family member because he would go around making peace for them. Aaron was extraordinary. So when he dies, there's a void. And the main thing he does is keep the people from saying terrible things. So what happens immediately after he dies? They say terrible things, right? And the Torah shows, they said, they started complaining about each other. They started complaining about Moses. They complained about God, God forbid. They do what we call lashon hara, right? They're slandering, they're saying bad things. And God says, I don't need this. I really don't. You're an annoying people. I don't need it. You're stubborn-necked, and I picked the wrong people maybe, right? So God is like, I don't need it. Snakes, right? God sends snakes. Why snakes? What are snakes symbolic of? Lashon hara, right? Because what do we learn about the snake in the very first Parsha of the Torah in Breshit? That it's going to lick the ground with its tongue, right? Its tongue, lashon, like lashon hara. Lots of little hints. The rabbis play games and they say snakes, right? What is lashon hara? It's the snake bite. So when the people start getting bitten by snakes, God is giving them a not so subtle hint that they need to stop talking trash about each other, right? And the people are like, we don't get it. And then Moses has to intercede. So then they make this nechoshet nachash, right? Nachash nechoshet, very fun to say. It's this bronze or copper snake, and it looks like a statue, and you might think it's an idol, and it seems like it gets rid of the snake bite, so maybe it is. Don't stress, right? Think it's something slightly different. Now I bring in that piece of Talmud I just love. We're jumping to brachot. In brachot, they're talking about brachot, blessings or prayers. And one of the things they say in a Mishnah is if you're in Texas and a rattlesnake coils itself around you as you're praying your Amidah, what are you supposed to do? Do you finish your Amidah? Yes. You can finish your Amidah. It might be the last one you give, right? So probably you don't finish your Amidah. As they're talking about that, all the rabbis are like, we know snake stories, because apparently they had snakes. So one of the stories that gets told, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa comes in, he goes, you got to hear the snake story I once encountered. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, a great Talmudic teacher, sitting in his Beit Midrash with all of his students around. Things are good. He hears yelling from outside. He goes running outside, and outside are some of his students, and they're holding their legs and their ankles and that sort of thing. And they say, there's an arvad outside. There's this snaky creature, and it's somewhere around, and it's biting students. And he says, oh no, right? Because those are his students. He cares about them. He says, where's the hole? And they say, oh, the hole's over there. Don't get close, Rabbi. And he's like, okay. And he takes off his shoes, and he takes off his socks, and he takes his foot, and he puts it right over the hole, where his heel is on the hole. And the arvad gets mad, and it comes up, and it bites him right on the ankle. And it dies. And he reaches into the hole. He's a hero. He takes the arvad, he sticks it over his shoulders. He walks back into the Beit Midrash with this dead snake on his shoulders. Weird guy. And the people there are all like, what is going on? And he says, see, haha, here's your symbol. It's not the snake bite that kills. It's sin that kills. It's lashon hara. You were slandering one another. So the snake came to give you a bit of your own medicine. The snake bite got you. And they all go, oh, that's good. And then my favorite part, which isn't relevant to this, but I have to tell it because it's good Gemara, right? My favorite part, they have a postscript there, And they say from before then, people would always say, woe be to the person who runs into an arvad, woe be to a person who runs into a snake, which is good advice. But from then on, they used to say, woe be to the arvad that runs into Chanina ben Dosa. Right? Don't tell me they don't have humor in the Talmud. And that story is so important. Why? Because what does he do? He recognizes the snake represents Lashon Hara. He recognizes that whether or not you believe it, sins and problems can lead to trouble. He sticks it on his shoulders. What is it for? It's a symbol that you shouldn't do that. And I think that's what the Nechoshet Nachash is. The copper snake is a reminder. The people get better. They're cured of the snake bite when they look at it because it's a literal symbol that says, don't do that. The snake bite might be a metaphor for how the people are talking about each other. And it's not really real snakes biting anybody. And therefore, you can have a statue of some sort. You're not praying to it. It's not really healing you. It's just a reminder that you need to watch what you say, which is kind of relevant, right? In today's day and age, we walk around, and what's the thing people don't guard enough ever? Like the Chafetz Chaim, the great rabbi, wrote a whole book about it called Shmirat HaLashon. It's our mouth. It's our tongue. We say all sorts of things, as I stand up here saying all sorts of things. We say all sorts of things, not really thinking about the impact they might have on the world, not really thinking how people might perceive what we say, and we create all sorts of problems and rifts because we're not so careful with how we say, what we say, when we say it. And the problem today is that we don't have a Nachash Nechoshet. We don't have a copper snake that comes around. We don't have weirdos walking into buildings with snakes on their shoulders that they've killed by putting their heel over the hole, right? We don't have that. And I love Chanina ben Dosa. How do we do it? How do we create that metaphorical snake reminder? And we know it works. You know how we know it works? Because at the end of the Parsha, after that, what do the people do immediately after they're cured? They send messengers to Sichon. Sichon is the biggest jerk ever, right? He's the worst, and he's going to fight Israel. But they give him a chance, and they say, maybe we were wrong in what we said about him. Let's send messengers, and the Midrash explains, send messengers means send warm tidings of peace. Let's send shalom. They're reminded of their exemplar, Aaron, when they see the snake statue, and they say, we've been falling short in pursuing peace. We need to be Rodfei Shalom. We need to be the active ones who try to repair the rifts in the world. We don't have that, but we kind of do, right? We don't have a copper snake. We don't have a literal snake. We don't have an Aaron, but we have a tradition that emphasizes being disciples of Aaron. And that's such a hard thing to do, and yet such a simple thing to start. So my challenge to all of us today is, how can you, don't look into the future, don't go 10 days from now, 50 days from now, 100 days from now. How can we be very careful of what we say and how we say it so that today we add a lot of goodness? Or for my benefit, the next 11 days that I'm here, if we can just be so careful about our tongues and what we say about someone who might have led a service or given a drosh that was too long or anything like that. Because I know if you do that, take an active step the next 11 days, you'll be making a profound impact on the world. And as our tradition says, if we're going to be the sort of people who are Rodfei Shalom, who are disciples of Aaron, the first step starts with us. Aaron didn't expect the people to make peace between each other. He said, I'm going to be nudgy and get in the middle of their fight, try to make peace. I don't need you to be too nudgy with each other. But if you see something happening that you're saying and you say, you know what, this might not be the best thing to say, just put it to the side, right? Don't spread the snake bite. And remember, if we're going to be an agudas achim, a conglomeration, my favorite word for that, right? A bunch of brothers and sisters living together in harmony, then we have to be as harmonious as possible ourselves and expect that the other person will meet us halfway. May it be soon, in our days, the next 11, hopefully. Shabbat Shalom.